Is it so strange? This is like our third episode that we're recording. We're like, we're so good at this.
I mean, the amount of effort that it takes, again, newfound respect for people who like do this like every day or do it for like as a full-time job. It's a lot.
It's a lot. And when you are one person trying to wear all of these hats, then suddenly you're like, where do I even focus? How do I do everything right all at once, right? So
so much pressure just like you saying that. How do you do everything right? But like, I'm not going to do everything right.
Yeah.
Like, let's just like figure it out as we go.
Oh my God, totally.
Yeah.
So today both of us kind of wanted to talk about how we got here. Like how did this come to be? How did Ann and Vic come to be a thing? We're sharing a studio. Now we're doing a podcast. Like what happened to bring, like what did the universe do in order to bring us together?
What happened, Vicky? I feel like people are always like, how did you and Vicky ended up like being studio mates? Are you guys in business together? Is she your business partner?
And people are so confused.
People are so confused by it. And I guess rightfully so, because we're just like in our own space, in our own heads. It's like, oh, I know what I do. I don't need to announce it to the world, what I'm doing. You know?
I don't think we've ever publicly made a post that was like, because of course both of us post on Instagram. So it's kind of like, how long could your caption be to completely dissect what had happened and what brought us here together, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I want to hear your perspective of like, what is our meet cute and how did this happen? Because I think, long story short, we'll get into the long story, but just to kind of like set it up, is it took about less than 6 months from the moment that we connected on social media to when we moved into a physical space together.
Yeah.
I mean, that if that's not moving fast, I don't know what is. Okay.
I know. Moved in less than 6 months. And I think moving into a studio, sharing a workspace together, that is your own. This is our sanctuary, right? Both of our sanctuaries. And to be able to share it with somebody is so much more intense than just, say, a roommate, or it's very much like a relationship. We have to have a really good base in order to commit to something like this, you know?
How do we meet, Vicky?
Tell me if I'm remembering wrong, but I think I found you. Your page came up, and I was scrolling through your feed. This is so weird. Like, I did not know of you before. Nobody put me on you. So your feed came up, and maybe at the time I was looking at shoe surgeon stuff a lot, because your profile came up, and I was looking through your feed, and I was like, oh my God, there was a female customizer in the group. And I was like, oh, this is kind of weird. I was quite new to social media at the time. I think I don't use Facebook or anything. So Instagram was me like completely throwing myself out there. And I was like, let me just reach out and tell her that she's killing it, because there aren't a lot of girls out there.
And can we tell everybody when this was?
When was it? December or January?
December of 2020.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I feel like I need to like scroll all the way back to our messages if it archives like that long ago. Yeah. But I am pretty sure we first connected on social media on IG in December of 2020.
Oh, wow. It feels like forever. It feels like I've known you forever. And the crazy thing is, at the time when I was scrolling through your feed, you had this badass haircut where like half of which I'm so excited that you're about to go back to it. Yes. So Anne had like half of her head was shaved and then the other half was long. And I was like, oh my God, it takes the most, I don't know, confidence and courage and just being comfortable with yourself to be able to pull off a hairstyle like that, in my opinion. Because I don't know if I could do that personally. And I was like, she's such a badass. Like, she might not even respond to my messages, you know?
Which is so crazy, right? Because I mean, you're sitting here saying that like, oh, I'm like really new to social media, which you probably are, but you tackled that with fierce, you know, because in December of 2020, I can't even say if you're even qualified as somebody who is new to social media when your authentic following is over 10K. So
that
it's
was
like
my achievement for 2020.
That almost does not even make sense for somebody to say, I'm quite new to social media, right? Because then you came in and you're like, this is my goal. I'm going to hit it. And you did within a short period of time, which is like not very common unless you go and purchase followers.
Yeah.
And so.
No, we didn't do that. I thought about it.
Right. She didn't. And so at the time in December of 2020, I think I had just launched my master classes online. Mm-hmm. And I think at the time, maybe I had about 1,500, 2,000 followers.
Yeah.
And so here's this woman in my mind on paper who looks and feels like an influencer with over 10K followers. Message me. I know you talk about this all the time. It's like, Ann, number is not a thing. I'm like, yes, it is to a lot of people. Okay, it may not be to you or to me, but it is to a lot of people. And so, of course, at the time when you messaged me, I was like, who's this person messaging me? Who am I? And of course, I made it about me. It's like, who am I? And so, of course, I was like, oh my gosh, you're so amazing, because she is amazing. And it's like right away there was just this mutual admiration and respect for each other's work. And Vicky is never I guess I never knew about her before because prior to December 2020, because she doesn't work in the space that I work in. Mm-hmm. So I work in the sneaker customizing space where we make sneakers from scratch, where you paint on sneakers that are finished. Yeah. And so, so again, I didn't really have a reason to kind of be connected to a person like you.
Had you seen people painting on sneakers at that time? Was it in your feed, or if it's not something that you browse, you're just like, wait, this is a whole thing?
It's not something that I browse. Okay. And the only person, so I do follow one person who is a sneaker customizer that paints and draws on shoes. Mm-hmm. And he's actually an artist that I came to know from working at the Shoe Surgeon, and he's actually still there today. But he is so incredible. I've shown you his art before, and again, he does what you do, but in a completely different style, right? And such a badass. But he's the only person that I know that does that until I met you. And so when you messaged me, I was kind of fangirling, right? And I was like, oh my God.
Which is ridiculous because I was fangirling, and I have no idea. I have imposter syndrome for people who had more followers, but then for people who, had, let's say, less, I didn't really even care because I was like, we're all just people, right? This number is just about maybe how often you post or the content that you post and all that stuff. At the end of the day, I just had so much respect for what you do as a designer, as an artist, and I was like, man, she makes shoes from scratch. What I do is just loose change. This is nothing. Right? So that's what I thought. I was like, I wish I had her skills. And this was not even knowing the amount of actual experience you have and the amount of skill that you have. Because now I'm like, holy crap, Anne is so experienced at making shoes, even beyond just the whole sneaker journey that you went on. Because my first point was, she went to the Shoe Surgeon. She was taking one of the classes. That's sort of all I knew. But then when I got to know her, I was like, oh, wait, Anne is this badass designer. She's worked at an actual shoe company. She has industry experience, and she even went to art school. And she's just so knowledgeable about so many things that you literally... I'm choking on myself. Okay. But you literally have so much knowledge about things like leather, about certain techniques that I'm learning from you on the daily. And that I didn't get from your followers or from your feed. I had no idea until I met you.
You are so nice. You are, seriously, that is the sweetest thing. But it's so interesting because I feel like the moment that was like such like a big deal to me was when you messaged me and you said, "Oh my gosh, like we should totally do a collab together." Mm-hmm. And now I'm like so curious and intrigued because now I want to flip back to that message that you sent me and see exactly what you said, because if I remember correctly, it's like one of those things where like people say to each other, it's like, "Oh my gosh, it'd be great if, one day we can work together," or like, "Oh, we should do something together." But it never comes to fruition. Mm-hmm. It's always something nice to say.
Yeah.
Whether or not it happens is besides the point,
yeah.
And so she said that to me, and of course, immediately I was like, "Oh my gosh, again, who am I? Like, why would this person want to do a collab with me? I am nobody, right?" And then so I was just like really surprised and honored that you will want to collab with me. And of course, like, I was like, I don't care if she's just joking and singing nonchalantly. I'm going to jump on this opportunity, because like I love her work. I think she's amazing and I would love to do something with her, with you. And so, and I think that was like, I don't know if that like was January or that was still December.
I think we were talking about it. So our collab was released roughly around the time of Chinese New Year's, which is in February.
It was like,
so we must
first
have met up
second
in
week
January
of February.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think maybe the initial conversation started in December. It's like, "Oh, we should do a collab together." Yeah. And then it's like, "Okay, great. Yeah, what does that mean?"
Right.
And then comes January, I think I had messaged you and I was like, "Hey, Vicky, like, is this still on the table? Like, are you still interested? Because I have an idea."
Right.
And so, am I remembering this correctly?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. And then so then at the time I had this idea of doing a Birkenstock Boston sandal, and I wanted to put like these petals, like fish scales, on the shoe. And then it sort of, like led me to kind of think about like, okay, what could this represent? And of course, like Chinese New Year was coming up, and you and I both being, Asian of Chinese descent, were like, "Oh, maybe we can do a Chinese New Year collaboration."
Yeah.
And of course, like this is so crazy because when I think about this, it's like, okay, like at the time compared to you, I feel like I was still so new to social media in the sense that I may not be thinking as much about strategizing like my social media content.
Right.
And so the fact that I was thinking about that at that moment in time, in hindsight, kind of surprises me. But then also it's like, yeah, I was thinking about it, but then in reality, we didn't have that much time, I remember.
Yeah.
Because then we started, so I sort of ran that idea by you. And then I was like, okay, so what do you think about like, doing a koi fish, like collaboration together? And you're like, "Yeah, great." And then we started pulling like moods from like Pinterest. It's like, "Oh, I think it's something like this, or like color like this, or da-da-da." And then we landed on something like more traditional that's highly recognizable, as koi fish, which is like white, black, and orange.
Yeah.
And so we were looking at the calendar at the time. It's like, okay, crap, like we only have like a few days for me to finish the shoe in order to give you enough time to sit on it and kind of think about what you want to do with it and how you want to paint it and compose the different colors on the shoe.
I was so scared.
Oh my gosh, why?
When we met in person, it was so that you could drop off the shoes, and you drove all the way to my apartment and dropped off, which I was like, "Oh my God, this is great. This is crazy." And the fact is, like, I don't know a lot of people in the Bay Area that do this. We both live in the Bay Area. How crazy coincidental is that?
So stoked about that.
Yeah, and so let me just say this. Like, I was very collab crazy. I was riding the high of like collabing with people and the opportunity to meet people online. So earlier in the year, I had collabed with a whole bunch of other artists who are still my friends now. But then And when she came, she was ready with the shoes. She made, I'm still so amazed with the fact that you can make shoes from scratch. So she brought these Birkenstock Bostons in with the scales all over it. And I looked at it, I was like, that's done. That's a done product. Like, what do you want me to do on it? How can I do it justice by painting some of the scales orange? And so I kid you not, probably spent a week, and I just had the shoe on my shelf and I just kept staring at it. Like, what do I paint on it? How do I make it look like a fish? Do I put eyes on it? Do I put, like, what else can I do to do this shoe justice? And I was like, that's why I was literally so scared. So honestly, for me, it has nothing to do with how many followers you have or, how big it is or whatever. I tackle every project in the same way, where I'm like, I need to put my best foot forward. I need to do the best that I can. And that project scared me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you.
No, it was like, in the best way possible, where it's like, I don't want to disappoint you.
Oh.
And like,
I remember you kept saying that to me. Yeah.
So like when I handed you back the box, I was like, okay, I don't know if you're going to like it, but I was so nervous to have you open the lid and take the shoes out, because I was like, oh, what if she hates it? What if she thinks it's atrocious? Like, what am I going to do?
Which is like so ridiculous, right? Because it's like, I agreed to do a collab with you and you agreed to do a collab with me because we already agreed that we love each other's work. Mm-hmm. And so for me, there's always been that trust from the get-go. It's like, I would never agree to do a collaboration with anybody if I don't truly believe that this person can live up to my very stupid, crazy, ridiculous high standards that Vicky will like attest to.
Can I just expose you a little bit? It's like getting to know you. So you were like a big sister to me, and you do have, Anne has exceptionally high standards. She is somebody who, for her own work and then even like way of life, you have high standards for things. And so it is so much more of a compliment when you say these things, because it's like, okay, if Anne says it looks good, it looks good. And you do that with the things that you observe. Like, we shit on things all the time. We talk so much crap about things because we're like, that's not done right. That could have been done better. But then also you put that into your work as well. So your stuff is just, you always very clean, always well done. And you always put the best out there, and so you expect the same in return.
You're so nice.
This is literally us in the studio. You're so great. No, you're so great.
Oh my God, yeah. Girl. So I want to share something that to me sort of embodies this episode that I want to call fate, because when I think back on how we met, when we met, and it really is just being in the right place at the right time, even for us.
Yeah.
And so I think, for somebody to ask me or you, like, how did this come about? Like, you really can't make this up.
Yeah.
So let me tell you what I haven't told you, because I've been saving it for this episode.
Oh my God. Okay.
And so, pandemic started back in March of 2020, right? So like we went through the whole like shutdown and everything, and then this is where like it was during the pandemic where you and I sort of like blossomed, and so I launched my master classes in December of 2020, and you hit your goal of hitting 10K followers by the end of 2020, and then so unbeknownst to you, Michael and I, so my husband and I, we actually had plans to go stay in Hawaii on Oahu for 2 months. And because my husband was working remote, and I obviously, I work for myself, so I have a flexible schedule. And so we're like, okay, let's go work remote from Hawaii for 2 months.
Yeah.
So we had booked our plane ticket, we had booked our Airbnb for 2 months, and we were supposed to leave for Hawaii, I think end of January. Wait, was it end of January? January, February? Yeah, end of January, beginning of February.
That's literally the time when we were doing a collab.
Yeah. And so I think it was, the second week of January, shortly after the new year rolled around, we decided that, okay, well, maybe we don't go. Mm-hmm. Maybe we, everything is still shut down in Hawaii. And granted, like we're really going there to kind of stay at Airbnb, and then we can just walk around and enjoy the beautiful tropical weather. So it's not like we really needed, things to be open and beaches to be open to really enjoy being away from, our routine life here in the Bay Area. And so, but for some reason, we just decided that, okay, maybe now's not the right time. So let's just cancel our trip and just like wait to go back another time. Mm-hmm. And so that sort of opened up the opportunity for me and Vicky for me and you to do a collab together.
So
because
crazy.
Had I gone to Hawaii, the collab would have never happened because it was before Chinese New Year and I would have been gone.
Yeah.
And so chances are, in my mind, that we wouldn't have met in person and exchanged the shoes in person and begin to chop it up the way that we have over the course of like 2 weeks while we're working on this shoe together. Mm-hmm. And then started to like build on this like really authentic relationship that we started building early on. And that probably wouldn't have happened ever because then the window of opportunity have now sort of passed. The ship has sailed. Like, so to wait for that to roll around again, who knows when that would be.
Who knows how long? And I feel like that collab was the reason why we built that trust to be like, okay, we can work together. We have similar ideas and ideals. And then moving forward, which later on, did we meet in between? I feel like we chatted a couple of times in between, right? Maybe just on the phone or... So the first time we met, I remember we talked about everything from food to why we got into this, to being Asian women in the industry, and then to our goals of potential, which was a stretch goal, definitely a stretch goal. I don't know for me if it was the same for you, but that we would have a studio.
That was the first time we met. We dropped that, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
In conversation, it was like, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be amazing if we got a studio together?
Yeah, exactly. And we were like talking about coffee shops too, and all of that stuff. And it's kind of too early for it to come full circle, but I feel like that expectation, or we manifested that from the very beginning.
Talk about self-manifestation. Honestly, that is, crazy.
If there was anything during that time that was a little bit of a stretch and that was like kind of just good to say because I was daydreaming, is the fact that we would get a studio. Yet here we are, we physically have a studio together and we're doing this. It's crazy. And we're recording a podcast. Like,
it's insane. No, but I mean, I honestly, like, I really truly believe in fate and how the universe sort of has like its way of working and bringing people together. Yeah. I feel like we're sort of the prime example of that.
Yeah. And I think the strangest thing for me also is like, maybe it was fate that we crossed paths, or maybe it was a coincidence that we crossed paths, but the way that we are so close in geographic, like, what do you call it? Location, we're so close in location. In addition, we both are in the sneaker world, in the sneaker customizing world, but we do different things. It's like we complement each other, and then we're also very similar, but then opposites in different ways. That's like, every time you think that it won't work out, everything somehow just falls into place as if it's meant to be.
Yeah, I remember when I first came to you, I think this was probably, was it March? Maybe it was March or April.
It was around that time, yeah.
And I was like, hey, Vicky.
Which I was kind of surprised because that's a big ask. Like I said, I think I already established that you have high expectations and high standards for who you would do that. So I was like, oh, well, maybe Anne likes me a little bit more than I thought that she would, you know?
Yeah.
Because I was like, she trusts me to share a studio with me. That's a big ask. Because, like, personally, I wouldn't share a studio with somebody who I thought, for example, was like super messy, which in the studio, I am the messy one. I'll admit to that.
Stop. No, you're not.
And I'm always like, Anne, please excuse me, but I have my stuff everywhere and I'll put it away, I promise. But even for me, like, baseline is I wouldn't share a studio with somebody, one who I thought I couldn't be honest with, one who was too dramatic, you know, somebody who's like all about the drama and just, I would get in, if I could foresee myself getting into a fight with somebody, I would just not do it. I would not even ask, I wouldn't even entertain, and I would brush it off. So for you to come to me and say, like, have you thought about getting a studio together? That was like, oh wait, maybe she likes me a little bit more.
I don't know where this insecurity is coming from because there's absolutely no need for that. But I was like, so Vicky, remember the conversation that we had back in January? That was kind of a joke, but maybe it's not a joke, you know? Yeah. So I'm thinking about getting a studio. Where do you stand, right? And sort of, so I approached you, I remember. I approached you because I think I was finally ready to seriously consider getting a studio for myself at the time. And part of that comes from, again, being in a great position with my students and having my online students making requests of potentially having me offer in-person classes. And the fact that I was offering master classes from the comfort of my own home made it a little challenging because I wouldn't necessarily host students in my home. Obviously for privacy reasons, but also, you know, I live in the suburbs and nobody wants to come to, you know, the suburbs to somebody's house in the garage to take a class, you know? There is nothing sexy about that. And so especially, you know, if I, you know, like there are people who go to, you know, LA to take shoe surgeons class, you know, and then they make like a week-long trip to LA, you know, and they spend some time in LA. I mean, that's a sexy trip, you know?
Part of the experience.
Right. It's part of the experience. Right. And I was like, I don't want somebody to, you know, fly out here just to go take a class in somebody's garage. Like, again, that's not fun for me. Or, you know, as a student, that's not the kind of experience, you know, that I will want to have, you know, if I'm spending X amount of money and time to go do this. And so that was when I started considering getting a physical studio because that is the only way for me to even entertain the idea of hosting someone in person. And so for, you know, people who really have no idea, you know, cost of living in the Bay Area is very high. And so expensive. Not only, you know, like regardless of like how much rent or mortgage you're paying for your personal shelter, you know, the thought of having to rent an office space it kind of takes me out of like the thought of wanting to get a physical space to host my students. And because then of course like immediately I think about like, oh, okay, what's the overhead cost is going to be, and you know, can I realistically, you know, generate enough income from doing this for my students to make it make sense for everybody.
In any other state it would, or you know, country even, it would sound like a lot. But then we're also talking about San Francisco, which makes it even worse because rent is so much more expensive. So like, and our businesses a lot of the time are online, right? So we're getting income from people all over the world. And so to think of how much business you need to get in order to cover this overhead is scary to do it alone.
Totally. And so of course I selfishly came to Vicky because 1, she's a customizer, 2, she's a female, 3, she's kick-ass, and 4, she's just like organized from what I can see online. And
it's
so
all fake.
No, it's not, okay? I would tell you if it is, because this relationship is built on honesty. So of course, you know, selfishly I was like, crap, like, well, I want to get a studio space, but the reality is I can't really get one on my own because it's just too expensive. I can probably get one on my own that's kind of somewhere out in the boony and kind of like has a weird layout and like in somebody's like, I don't know, like side of their house, you know, kind of a weird setup situation. Again, not the sexy experience I want to provide, you know? Yeah. And so, you know, any space that I would consider moving into was out of my price range. And so that's when I was like, okay, I need to get a studio mate. And to your point earlier, that was a very difficult thing for me to admit and to consider. I don't know if I told you this before, but I think so. I mean, when I went to college, I never stayed in the dorms because I went through my undergrad like while I was still living at home. And then by the time I was ready to move out, I refused to get a roommate.
You didn't even give it a shot?
I did not give it a shot because I know my personality. I know how particular I am. To a point where I am very difficult. And I admit that and I'm okay with that and that's who I am. But I am so very particular in the way that I live and the way I organize things that I knew I couldn't even attempt to live with someone else because I would, like they would drive me crazy, basically. Yeah. Regardless of the fact if I would drive them crazy, but they would drive me crazy. Yeah. So after I was ready to get my own apartment, I was willing to pay so much more money to live by myself in the city than to find a roommate. Yeah. Which is like kind of interesting when I say that out loud because now I'm looking at you and it's like, wait. But then why would I consider getting a roommate for my studio? Because if I use the same logic, I would never, right? And maybe it's like a maturity thing, and maybe is based on my interaction with you, and maybe it's just based on what I observed of you and the way that you work, that I felt like maybe it would be okay with you. And so... And
Which
then
is
also
a huge compliment. It's a huge compliment.
Again, let's go back to me just being selfish for a moment, right? It's like, okay, like it's a risk is it a risk I'm willing to take if it means I can find somebody to share the cost of a studio with me? Yeah. And so that's when I approached you with it.
Which is crazy because I don't think, okay, I am a very I would say introverted person. I like to do everything on my own. I like to have I would close the door of my own room and just spend hours making stuff, doing whatever on my own, even with social media and stuff. I do not share this in a large group, and I don't work with a lot of people. And I don't know if it was because of COVID pandemic, we were kind of all locked inside, but that part of me took over a lot. So I think I didn't entertain it because I was like, I could not on my own afford a studio. So I didn't even look for options. I didn't look for studios. I didn't look for how much they were. I had no idea. And when you approached me, I was like, oh, wait, like this is an opportunity. Can I do it? Because my workspace and what I want to jump into, like the reason why I decided to go back into the sneaker customizing world is because this is my, like, I'm giving it my all. This is my one last chance to do something that I entirely love, throw everything that I have into it, take the biggest risk of my life, and am I okay to do this with somebody else? You know, like share a studio, actually pay money. I tried to do everything as much as I could at home, and we were in a stuffy little studio apartment, and then eventually it was a 1-bedroom apartment, but my setup was in the living room. And I was like, I'm kind of perfectly fine, but also we have all these pain points, which is like all of the tech and equipment we don't have enough space for. But then still, I didn't entertain the fact that this would be financially a really big jump. And then also, can I actually spend this much time with another person and be productive and get work done. And I'm like happy to say it's crazy that it works out. And you inspire me and you teach me so many things. And I feel like we say this all. Ann does this thing where she's like, "Oh, I'm always riding your coattails." It's not true, because I think it's both ways. Like, one of the reasons why we're going soon to Amsterdam, right? One of the reasons why I even get to go is because I am like so close to you.
No, I disagree, but okay.
I agree. And I think so. I totally think so, because, and that's not the only thing. There are so many things that you're doing. The NFT thing, I'm not gonna say too much about it, but there's that too. So many exciting projects that we can loop each other in. Either it's because of proximity or whatever it is, that this just works out. The fact that we do very different things, but we're in the same world, we are better together almost than when we were alone, which is a good reason to have a studio together. Because because we have this studio together, we are just not doing any differently, then was there ever a point in this overhead and committing to this process? But there totally is, because right away we are doing more than we could have done individually.
Yeah, I remember I had my client was in here last week, and then she was looking at, of course I was like, oh my gosh, check out what my, studio mate does, she's so amazing. And then of course my client's very impressed. And then of course immediately I was offering to my client as a service. It's like, oh yeah, if you ever want to incorporate, custom painting into your custom build, like Vicky would be the perfect person for the job.
Thank you.
But then it's like, I talk about this all the time. It's like, no, I don't need to learn how to do everything. I just need to find somebody who is very good at what they do and utilize their skill set.
Yeah.
And so that, to your point, about us having a studio makes us stronger together. Like, that's pretty much what it means to me.
Yeah. It's still beyond me how we managed to find each other. I cannot find a sneaker artist near me, let alone somebody who just fits in like a puzzle so much like we do here, because you have expertise, you have skills that are almost entirely different but complementary to what we do together, and it's just crazy. And with your client coming in, it was so much fun because I could just sit at my desk and eavesdrop a little bit and then whenever it was appropriate. At the end of the day, I literally just wheeled my chair over. We have this conference table in the middle of our studio, and I just sat there and we chatted. We had a really down to earth chat about being women in the industry, being Asian women, and it was just so cool. So I feel like this is something that is so unique to us, and maybe I'm being a little big-headed, but the industry has not seen something like this, quite like this. I think there are sneakerheads that are girls that have come together to do a podcast, but in terms of creators, in terms of artists, two people who come together working in the same space doing almost entirely different things, but can relate on so many levels, such that we want to have a podcast. Because literally we sit across from each other and we're like, girl, I got something to tell you. Whether it's a rant or an observation or something that we're struggling with, the other person can understand where it's coming from. We don't have to go into this huge backstory about why this is important to us, but the other person already understands and knows, and then can comment on it and be like, you're being crazy, or no, this is totally valid. This is something I've experienced as well.
Yeah. My mom always says, luck favors the prepared. And in a weird way, I think it sort of applies to our situation, because I think at the end of the day, when we decided that, yes, let's get a studio together, it really came down to, okay, individually, separately, are we both in a place and in a position to where we realistically, not idealistically, but practically ready to hold a physical space and have that overhead hanging over us every month. And we couldn't have done this if only one of us was ready for that.
Yes. And let me just say that this didn't go completely smoothly. It wasn't like we didn't have a period of time when we doubted this decision. Like, is this the right decision for us to make? Can we actually do this? I think maybe I was a little more hesitant because I would be like, Ann, I don't know. Like, we kept having phone conversations. She's like, well, there's no pressure, but I'm going to check out the studio that we're going to. Do you want to come? Do you want to just see it? And I was like, it's kind of like getting a dog. When you go and when you see that thing that you've wanted for so long and you're like, oh, you can't walk away from it, So I was afraid too. I was like, what if I go there and I just absolutely fall in love with the idea of getting a studio? Then what? Can I pay for it? Can I even afford it? Because rent and food and cost of living is already so high in San Francisco. Am I ready to hustle that extra bit so that I could cover the overhead for this? In the long run, is this going to be good for our careers? And both of us have partners who share a life with us, right? And so we had to, it was really funny, we had a couple Zoom call.
Yeah, we did.
Where we had to lay it down for the boys and say, like, explain why, because I guess they weren't against it. They're just more, they were playing devil's advocate. They really wanted us to get our numbers right. Like, are you making the right financial decision? And both of us are a little more, I would say, dreamers not dreamers, but just romantic about our careers and what we want to pursue, right? Like, we have high hopes for this and what we do, and we truly believe in what we do right now is really good for us. And so they were like, but show us the numbers, right? Can you make this much money in order to cover it? And almost like thinking back, it's not a lot of money because we get to share it. Luckily, we get to share it because I don't think alone I would be able to do this.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, and sharing it makes it a lot more easy to swallow in terms of finances. But yeah, we had to go through all of that, and we came up with pros and cons. We slept on it for so many nights. I was like, I don't know, maybe. And I remember you saying, okay, Vicky, what if we split it in a different way? What if it was like 60-40? Would that help you financially? Or like, even if like I paid more and you paid less. And I was like, no, that doesn't make, I think that's when I realized, like, I was like, if we are going to share a studio together, if we're going to build on this relationship, we have to be very honest with each other. And to me, it's like, it should be fair. It should be split half. There's nothing that, a 10% of the rent is going to really do for me at the moment. And like, it doesn't make sense, right? And I think both of us commit equally to this relationship, to the studio, and to what we do, such that this works really well. Right?
Yeah.
It's the honesty, it's being very raw with each other and accepting that we both have flaws, we both have strengths as well, and we embrace all of that working together.
Yep.
Yeah.
Aww. You are literally, I always tell people this, just like, Vicky is like, if I ever did online dating, she would be like all the crap that I had to go through in order to find this gem. We
didn't even look, though. It wasn't like Instagram is our Tinder, but it wasn't like we were on there swiping,
Right.
Like, we didn't intend to find a studio mate. We didn't intend to find our soul sister online. It just happened. It just so happened, which is why we think this is, I don't know if fate is the right word, but we just feel like this strangely was meant to be.
Look, at the end of the day, love finds you when you're least expecting it.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to end on that note.
This is more romantic than our own relationships, I feel like.
Kind of is.
A little bit,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
A bit.
Yeah. So,
I love talking about the kind of how we got to where we are today with you, Vicky. Thank you.
Thank you. And I feel like there's so much more to kind of unfold in the coming weeks when we're doing podcasting, because there's obviously, the finances of stuff. I would love to do an episode where it's just breaking down, how do these two girls cover this overhead? Or like, what are we charging? What are and I kind of want to be really honest and open about these things, because it's not nice and dandy. And a lot of girls have reached out to both you and me about, how do we get to where you guys are? Right? So it's like a future, that's a whole other can of worms that we have to open up. But yeah, this is fun.
Thanks, Vicky.
Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you guys for
and we'll catch you guys in the next one.
Peace.
Bye. Okay, easy. 45 minutes.
Fun.
Oh my God. 2 episodes. All right.
Done.
How did you feel about this one? Okay.